Hey guys, welcome to my HTML and CSS tutorial. In this set of tutorials, I'm going to show you guys the basics of getting started coding your own website. So the first things you're going to need to do is build two files. Those files are your index or your main page.html to signify this is an HTML file, and then a style.css, a cascading style sheet file. So once you have your two files, I'm going to explain to you guys sort of the basics of how it works. Now, in this tutorial, it was a little weird, but in this tutorial we're going to cover two main things. Number one is what responsive and adaptive web design are, as that's mainly what this is about. And number two, how to make your website responsive. Okay, that sort of fits in number one. And number two, how to just basically use HTML and CSS. Now for programs, I highly recommend Microsoft Visual Web Developer 2010 Express, which there will be a link in the description to that, as it's versatile and it works extremely well. Plus it has this great thing where it auto-completes certain aspects of your code. Let's get started. So the first page that you're going to see is probably going to be an HTML page, and it will look something like this. You'll have a few main things. So we're going to cover the three main outer tags, as I like to call it, outer tags, as I like to call them, of your web page. There's your doc type. This tells the browser what it's written in. It tells the browser how to interpret your page. Generally, it will be doc type HTML. It's probably public, and then it will tell you what type of HTML you're using. The type of HTML generally you're going to want to be using either XHTML 1.0, I think, transitional, or some form of HTML 4 or 5. Let's get started. The differences between these are small. Actually, they're pretty big, but and they won't matter in this tutorial. So until you get into really complex stuff, it generally won't matter which type of HTML you're using. Let's get started. So as you can see, this is sort of weird. Like, you're like, huh, you're confronted with these weird things. Oh, the other three tags. There's an HTML tag. This is the outside. This tells the page what is your HTML. It tells you where is the HTML that I should be looking at. You have your head tag, which this is in your, this is where information about your website will go. For instance, what keywords are related to it, what the name of it is, which is this title thing right here, as well as any files that you want to be put into the page, like your style sheet. You want the page to see that. Your body tag is everything that the page will see as, like, look at. So if I type blah blah if I type something into the head tag, it won't display. Whereas if I type something into the body tag, it definitely will display, as it sees the body as the content. So the way that an HTML tag is formatted is, I think you've probably already picked it up by now, is you use these guys, and on the inside, you type whatever you want, whatever the tag name is. Now there's a ton of different tags. As you can see, if I make this, these are all the different tags. And this one we're pretty much going to be working with, namely, div tags. So, add this div to signify a div, and then close it. And then if your program doesn't autocomplete, you'll need to add a slash to the div, and then div again. But otherwise, so next we're going to open, and yeah. Now, obviously, you've got your very first element added. Next, let's take a look at the CSS. Actually, let's add something into here. So, my web page. Let's save that. And yeah. Now I'm going to add one more type of tag, and that is called a link tag, like this, link href. Href signifies where it points. Rel, I'm not entirely sure what rel does, I just know it's required. And then the type. So you have your links. This one will tell the page that it should add in the styles right here in this head, the style that you want your web page to look like. So, if you notice in your style, it'll probably have some form of starter, like body. Now, there are three ways to apply a style to something. Sorry for this cough, but first one is apply to all of these elements. So this will apply to all elements that are body elements, which there should be only one. Whereas if I did something like this, div, added my curly brackets, and typed whatever in here, some form of style in there, it will apply that to every single div tag. But if you want to be more specific, there are two ways to go about doing that. First one is by using a class. Classes can be used to multiple items. For instance, I can call this one class A, and then class a ton of other divs A, and that will apply to all of them. Or I can just apply it to this one, and it will only apply to this one. So we're going to class this one as the header, so the top of our page. In here, so how to tell the page to look for it, you do a dot to signify that it's a class header. Add your curly brackets and then type some stuff in there. The other way to do it is through an ID. Now the difference between IDs and classes is pretty big, but they both are allowed to, say, have the CSS look at them. So we ID it. We can ID it as header again. So the differences are, header does something extremely unique. It can only be applied to one element per page, in general. But only one element per page. For instance, if I try to apply it to another div, if I try to apply it to this div, it will pop up an error saying, oh, there's two header tags, or there's two IDs that are called header, and that's not good. So go back to here. The upside of headers, though, saying why would I ever use that, is that if I have a URL, for instance, mywebsite.com, I can use a header. For instance, if I do header, I can target this. For example, say I have a div tag really far down my website, so you have to scroll to get to it. I can ID it as something, and then whenever you click a link, you can say it's far down. Whenever I click a link that leads to hashtag far down, it won't try to find a page that is hashtag far down. It will just look for an element on the page and guide me to that element, which is unique. But we're not going to be using IDs a ton in this. We're mainly going to be using headers. Or classes, sorry. So, now let's get into CSS. CSS is the other fun part. So if we have our header tag, oh, and I never mentioned how to look at a div. Divs are done using hashtags. So it'll be hashtag header, sorry. Then your curly brackets. So let's get started in my other tag, my header, right here. Well, let's start it off by saying, let's make our header tag, what should we do to it? Let's make the font size big. So normally, if we go and view our page in a browser, it'll just have some text right here. Now if we minimize, and we go into our styles, and we add, say, font size 100 pixels. Then, if we go into here, and refresh, as you can see, it got a lot bigger. Yeah. And you can, we'll get into adding more styles in future videos. Now, we're at 7 minutes and like 50 seconds right now, so I'm just going to wrap up quickly with our adaptive and responsive design discussion. So, in here, adaptive and responsive design is a pretty simple idea. The idea of it, behind it, is if we move our web page like this, it will resize elements until it works, until it, how do I say this? Until the page, so the page always fits, so there's never any weird scroll bars on your page. So it's never, for instance, if you go to the Target website, as you can see, you have to scroll across their entire website to access, which is probably pretty annoying, and you have to zoom, which is annoying for people that are on mobile devices. Now, their website actually does work on mobile, but I'm just using an example because for some reason it doesn't work like this. Now, there's two different types of ways to do this. There's responsive design, which says that my website is permanently, it's just natural. Like, it works that way naturally. For example, if I make it so my web page only has 3 elements, a content box in the middle, a thing up in this corner, that's a small icon, and a thing up in this corner, that's a small icon, and then no matter how far you resize the web page, it will you'll never have to scroll, as it will automatically wrap everything in your column down, as well as keeping those elements positioned to the sides of the browsers. The other way to do it is adaptive, and this uses CSS media queries, which sound complicated, but they aren't, to say, oh, hey, when we get to, say, less than 600 pixels, I want you to change this about the website. Now, the other way to the way to approach this, there's 2 ways to approach this. Number 1 is design your entire website with responsive or adaptive in mind. The other way is to use a framework. There's a few different main frameworks. The most popular is Bootstrap. Bootstrap is an extremely popular framework. And as you can see, if I resize, does this cool thing, makes it so there's no weird thing, and then if I go back up, it works just like this. So that's how, there's Bootstrap, and this is, it is the most popular HTML, CSS, and it has a bit of JavaScript framework. Now, framework basically means you attach the page, you download the pages, put them in your website, and you use its specialized elements or whatever to make your website cool. The other thing that I use a lot is Parange. I actually wrote this, so it may seem a bit like self-advertising, but Parange is a version of Bootstrap that's just a little bit more beginner-oriented. Has some pretty basic documentation for how to use it, and it's overall just pretty simple. We might use Parange later in the tutorial series, but for now we're going to be sticking with designing it all ourselves. So that was video 1. If you didn't think that we covered enough in this video, just go check out video 2 and I get it posted, as that will get really started coding your website. Thanks for watching. Again, always check out the other videos we have on our channel, and bye.